Good morning. Today we're going to talk about Marx's view regarding money. We're on roughly page 83. How does Marx understand money? Well, money is a process. In other words, don't imagine that it is something absolutely stable and fixed. Even when it is pegged to gold, as on a country or an economy that's on the gold standard, it's not fixed. Because remember, gold, as we're going to see, is also a commodity, and the value of gold, I checked this morning. Okay, we're going to be talking about commodities. The price of gold was, I checked this morning, it's 1613, I think. Yes, 1613. Huh? 1,000, yeah, $1,600 an ounce, right? OZ. Okay, here we go. Features of social life before men try to give an account not of their historical character, since they are already regarded. Okay. Consequently, it was only the analysis of commodity price. Okay. There are various commodities. Well, oil. I think the price of oil is about, I think it's $30 a gallon, right? Crude. And then, of course, there are different kinds of crude oil, some of which, like crude, you're going to pay more for because it produces less carbon. Okay, and it's cleaner. That's to put it simply. So the money is a process. It's also, according to Marx, a system of social relationships. Okay, we'll see a little bit more clearly what he means by all that. Okay, so, and only the common expression of all commodities in money, right? In other words, a particular commodity, right, or corn, right? Corn is $325 a bushel. Okay. Incidentally, the Chicago Board of Trade deals with commodities, like pork bellies, from which you make bacon. So only the common expression of all commodities in money that led to the establishment of their character as values. You could use gold for money, or you could use silver for money, as in silver coins. It is, however, just this ultimate money form of the world of commodities that actually conceals, rather than disclosing, the social character of individual labor. And remember, for Marx, it is labor that creates value. Okay? And what is value? Value, according to Marx, is the amount of labor time necessary to produce a commodity. Okay, a commodity is something which is a commodity. A commodity is something that's bought and sold. Okay? A little further. So the social character of individual labor and the social relations between individual producers. If I assert that coats and boots, commodities, right, products that are produced, stand in relation to linen as the universal incarnation of abstract human labor, the absurdity of the statement is obvious, right? But we're not going to use linen as the basic form of money, right? The original basic form of money was the cow. Why? Well, because from the cow you got not only milk, you got meat, and you got hides, and also you had manure. And the manure was good for, not manure in your crops, the manure was good for fuel, right? In fact, there were those in India who always maintained that rice cooked over a manure fire tasted better. Okay, if I assert that coats, boots, and stand in relation, okay, but when the producers of coats and boots relate these articles to linen, or what is the same thing, to gold and silver, right? Silver is also a commodity. I forget what the price of silver is at the moment. Sometimes it's around $16. As a universal equivalent, they express the relation between their own individual labor and the collective labor of society in the same absurd form, right? In other words, the money is, okay, it's a process. It's in process, right? It never stays fixed. The value of money is, well, okay. Moving right along. Let's take a look over on page 113. He says, it will, okay, in the pre-capitalist stage, okay, when does capitalism begin? Basic question. And of course, Marx's answer is when labor becomes a commodity. In other words, when remember, a commodity is something which is bought and sold, right? So the laborer sells his labor to the capitalist, and the capitalist buys that labor. So something which is bought and sold is a commodity. So when does capitalism begin? Capitalism begins when labor itself gets bought and sold. Okay, and this will vary at different times relative to different societies, countries, etc., depending on the stage they are in their economic development. In pre-capitalist stages of society, commerce rules industry. Well, it's a pre-industrial age. In modern society, it is the other way around. Okay. In other words, once the economic form of a society takes on the character of capitalism, then you're going to get a very different sort of economy. Of course, commerce will have more or less strong repercussions on society between which it is carried on. Well, because different societies can be at different stages of economic development. It will subject production more and more to exchange value. Okay. Remember what? What produces value? Well, it's labor that creates or produces value. And what is exchange value? Okay, according to Marx, exchange value is the commodities the commodity purchasing power in other words, exchange value is what you can purchase with what you have produced. Okay, so let's go a little further. So it will subject production more and more to exchange value by making the satisfaction of needs and subsistence more dependent on the sale than on the immediate use of the products. Okay, let's go a little further. The development of commerce and commercial capital, right? Capital. And of course, when does capital begin? When labor itself is bought and sold on the open market. It becomes a commodity. So the development of commerce and commercial capital brings about everywhere an orientation of production toward exchange value. Okay, and exchange value, again, is the commodity's purchasing power. Increases its volume, multiplies and universalizes it, and develops money into world money. Okay? There's money, and then there's world money. In other words, a universal medium of exchange, right? In the age of the conquistadores, right, it was the doubloon or the ducat, right? In the 19th century, it was the French franc. The franc was the universal currency in the world. In the latter part of the 19th century, early part of the 20th century, it was the English pound. And of course, after American, and of course today, right, pound, franc, doubloon, ducat. And of course, today it is the American dollar. That's the universal currency, the world currency. And everything is denominated in terms of the dollar, right? Most, the commodities are quoted in dollars. And incidentally, if you're buying oil, you have to buy it with American dollars. Which of course puts certain economies, especially less developed ones, at a very serious disadvantage. And above all, if the country has become indebted as a result of industrialization or whatever reason. So you get world economy, or world money. Let's go a little further. Flip over to page, where is it? That's not it. Oh yeah, here it is. The top of page 120. The capitalistic form, right? Capitalism. When does capitalism begin? When labor becomes a commodity. The capitalistic form, on the contrary, presupposes from the outset a free wage laborer. Okay, he's free. Yes. He's free to sell his labor or not to sell his labor. And of course, if he doesn't sell his labor, he may starve. So it's, okay. A free wage laborer who sells his labor power to capital, right? In other words, so when does capitalism begin? When the laborer is able to sell his labor as a commodity on the open market. Historically, however, this form developed in opposition to peasant agriculture and to independent handicrafts, the guilds, for example, whether organized in guilds or not, right? So the indeed, the fact that the laborer sells his labor power to the capitalist becomes a form of alienation, right? Remember, labor is a form of alienation both for Hegel and for Marx. So, so what is money? It's a process. It's also it's exchange. It's also a language. The American Supreme Court, in its infinite wisdom, decided with Citizens United that money is allowed to talk in politics, and unlimited funds can be given to different candidates for their running for whatever office they happen to be running for. And they might be, some of them, especially the more conservative members, might be surprised that Marx would have approved of this. They would undoubtedly be chagrined to discover that Marx would approve of this. So money, like language, is a form of communication, right? Language is communication. And of course, money is also a form of communication. Money talks. War is too. Remember, war is also a form of communication. About the middle of page 116 there, he says, for the conquering barbarians, war itself is still, as already suggested above, a regular form of intercourse. In other words, in the same way that language is a form of intercourse, so is war. Right? In other words, the Israelis and the Palestinians are constantly communicating with each other. Okay, let's move on just a little further. Okay, here we go. Money becomes international money, or world money. Over on page 124, there's a, toward the end of that paragraph there, therefore, the medieval adage, nulle terre sans seigneur, no land without a lord, right, the lord of the manor, is replaced with a new adage, l'argent n'a pas de maître. Money has no master, right? Money has no master. Who controls money? Who controls the amount of, well, you'd say, well, in the United States, in other countries, the central bank, in the United States, the Fed. So the Fed controls, well, it can influence money supply, and it can, in times of recession, can pump money into, or in a time of pandemic, it can pump money into the economy, right? Or when there's inflation, it can raise the interest rates. But does the Fed control the value of the money in a? No, I think you'd probably say that at the moment, it's the coronavirus that is controlling the economy of the world. Right? Not just the United States. So the money has no master, right? Can the government control the economy? No. Does the Fed control the economy? No. Who controls the economy? The economy controls the economy. Or maybe today, the coronavirus does. Okay, so money is a process, it's a system of social relations, and it has no master, which expresses the complete domination of living men by dead matter. Okay, let's move on a little further. Oh, yeah. An indispensable condition for the establishment of manufacturing industry, right? In order to set up a manufacturing company, you need capital, right? Was the accumulation of capital facilitated by the discovery of America and the importation of its precious metals? Well, the ducat, Spain, right? The galleons came back from the New World loaded with silver and gold. And that's what fueled the industrial development of Europe. And the importation of its precious metals. Speaking more locally or nationally, remember the 49ers, right? The 49ers, 1849, gold was discovered at Sutter's Creek in California. And of course, that began the California gold rush. Subsequent to that, and of course that was one of the reasons for developing the railroad to run east, right? Get that money back to where it could be used to build up the industrial strength of the United States, right? $50 billion a year went east from California in the 1850s. 50 billion, and that's when that was a lot of money. Still a lot of money, and that's what fueled the industrial development of the United States in the late 19th century. So it's you need capital in order to industrialize. And some countries make mistakes on this score. For example, Argentina decided to industrialize at a certain period in its history. I think it was around in the 30s or 40s. And what they did, they ruined a perfectly good agricultural industry, namely cattle, which the Pampas were one of the richest sources of grass for feeding cattle, and cows could live outside all year long because they didn't have severe winters. And so what Argentina did, it ruined an agricultural economy in order to create an industrialized one for which it did not have the market for the products produced by its industrialization, right? So every once in a while, countries, economies make mistakes, and sometimes they get away with it, and more often than not, they don't. Okay, so where are we now? On page 148, the bottom paragraph there, the laborer receives means of subsistence. Okay, capital. What does capitalism own? It owns the means of subsistence. It owns the means of production. It owns the raw materials. And, in a way, it owns the laborers. What? It owns its laborers. Because, remember, it bought them, right? With capitalism, labor sells its labor as a commodity. It is bought by the capitalist. So in a way, capitalism owns the means of subsistence. The worker gets from the capitalist a portion of the existing means of subsistence, right? In other words, the capitalist pays the laborer a wage for his or her labor. For what purpose do these means of subsistence serve him, i.e. the laborer? For immediate consumption. Right? Well, he gets the means of subsistence, he buys the means of subsistence from the capitalist, right? Or the company store. And we had a company type store down in McClary. There was a lumber mill there when several years ago. I don't know whether it's still there or not, I'm not sure. But the company, it was a company town, right? And the company, the McClary sawmill, I forget what the name of the enterprise was. Anyway, they owned the means of they owned it was a company town. They owned all the houses, they owned the grocery stores, right? The filling stations, they owned everything, right? Okay, the means of subsistence, and of course, needless to say, there was no competition. They could charge whatever they liked. For immediate consumption. But as soon as I consume means of subsistence, they are irrevocably lost to me. In other words, I eat up the fruits of my labor. Unless I implore the time during which these means sustain my life in producing new means of subsistence. Well, I suppose you could have a little garden in your backyard. In creating my own labor new values in place of the values lost in consumption. Well, not too many do this. And also, back in the old days, it was not an 8-hour day and a 40-hour week. If you still had energy enough when you got home to sit in front of the TV, no, they didn't have TV, to sit in front of the radio and listen to the news and drink a beer, that was about the size of it. You didn't have either time or energy to do much of it. You couldn't work a second job back in those days because the job you worked was already a job and a half. So, but it is just this noble reproductive power that the worker surrenders to the capitalist in exchange for the means of subsistence received. Consequently, he has lost it for himself. And of course, now remember what's happening here. When labor sells, remember, for both Marx, for both Hegel, right? Labor creates identity. Right? Labor creates identity. What I do makes me to be who I am. Right? Remember the shoemaker? Schumacher. The shoemaker, right, has an identity. In fact, he will put that identity on his product, on the shoes that he produces, made by Wilhelm, made by Willie the shoemaker. And he'll put, these boots were made by Willie. And of course he takes pride in what he produces. And how about the factory worker, right? Working on the line producing Studebakers. No, they don't make Studebakers anymore. Producing Chevrolets, right? Nobody's name is on that car except GM, right? The one who actually put it together, the laborer, no. Okay, so if labor creates identity and you sell your labor, right? You've sold your identity, right? If labor creates identity and you sell your labor, well, that is that is alienation. Okay, just a little more and then we'll quit. Yeah, I think, no, why don't we stop there? And we'll pick it up on Wednesday. And again, we need to thank Brother Damien for his technical expertise in producing these marvelous videos. Have a pleasant day.